All right, we are recording. For those who are new, welcome to Intro on Business. You missed the last time I bore my soul. There was a lot of crying and therapy done. You missed all of that. You'll have to catch that up later. GDP. Still getting into my other subject. I need to put in that discussion form so we can use a little extra credit. I forgot about that. All right. Who's going to be our good person today? Hayden, you're new. You're the last one in, so you get to remind me.
Sounds good.
Outstanding. All right. You don't see it up by Friday afternoon, then you shoot me an email.
Okay.
We're just starting our economic indicators. Briefly, we talked a little bit about the business cycle. If you remember correctly, we talked about that going up and down, but generally it does go up. GDP. GDP is used as a measuring stick for the economic output of a country. It stands for gross domestic product. This is carefully worded. It refers to the total value of all goods and services produced by in a given period by a national outcome through domestic factors. If you ever take an econ class, what they're going to do is break this up. Total value, goods and services produced in a given period in a local area. They're going to break all this down. We talked about this a little bit last time. Products times the quantity. And in our case, this happens to be our magic brownies. Anybody remember how much our magic brownies cost as far as our special in the morning, the coffee brownie and the little bag of potato chips?
Was it $5?
Correct. $5 for the magic brownies. You sell 1.5 million units. There's the GDP you have produced for the economy. To the few of you who are new, that's supposed to be a multiplication. Magic brownies are just what they sound like. If you don't know what magic brownies are, talk to someone else in class. We already had that discussion. Or we can talk to somebody from MSU. I'm sure they know what a magic brownie is. Or Michigan, or Eastern, or Western, or whatever. I'm sure they know what a magic brownie is. This is used as an idea of where the country is compared to another country. If you're starting a business, the idea is where am I going to put my business? I'm going to have to make sure that the economy can support the business. Does it have enough growth? There are only 10, 15 countries over the $1 trillion mark. I have to double check. You also use this for other purposes as far as the production or the different political structures that you have in your economy. If your economy is constantly growing, you have a different political tools that you use. If it is growing too fast, that's a different group of tools. If it's growing too slowly, that is a third group of political tools. In econ, you get around to monetary policy and fiscal policy. Monetary policy refers to whether or not you increase or decrease the money supply in the system. Fiscal policy refers to what in this country Congress does, taxing and spending. Then we get into the argument of whether or not you believe more in a micro or a macroeconomic theory, et cetera, et cetera. This isn't this class, but it does pertain to all of that. Once again, econ is the mother of all business classes. So I would suggest if you're a business major to take at least macro. There you are looking at numbers from 2015. It is closer to $20 trillion now. At that time, it's close to $18 trillion. Growth rate from last year, 2.4%. That's well within the Federal Reserve's target rate. You're also looking at per capita GDP. The way you figure this out is whatever the GDP is the country, you divide by the population. This is the per capita. This, in theory, is what middle class is. There is no real definition, but this is what you use as an average. And as you would imagine, developed countries have a higher GDP per capita than other countries. Remember, we talked about this. There are three tiers: developed, developing, and underdeveloped. And because this is an accelerated course, you will not have a final project. As tempting as I am to do that, I won't do that to you. But if you catch me again in the fall and I'm hopefully doing other business classes, you will have a final project. GNP refers to all the products produced regardless of the location. Generally, we're talking more domestically than internationally. The other problem you get is if the company has international outlets, how does the nation put that into play? The largest exporter and the largest country handling international business is China. They export more than any other country on the world. The second largest country to export more than any other country is the United States. Although the United States buys more from China than any other country, the US is no slouch as far as exporting goods itself. So if you're thinking more of a domestic nature, the country has to look after itself, understand the US sends out a lot of stuff. So before you get to that mindset, I suggest you put that into the equation. Companies like Boeing sell a whole lot of stuff. Precisely the difference between, say, GDP and GNP. General Motors has an automobile plant in Brazil. The profits in there are earned included in the US national product, but not the GDP. GDP is, again, domestic. The gross national product includes anywhere. There's a question of which one is better. It is not a question to answer. It is just the way it is. One isn't better than the other. They both have their flaws, but most people use GDP as a default. I would look at both just to get a clear picture. Here's my recommendation on that. Slide 33, we're on page 22. Looking at it, as you can see, per capita GDP. The line that I would love to see from here, this line would probably indicate average incomes. The per capita GDP is a misleading figure. Since you are here, I'm going to assume none of you are multimillionaires. Just taking a guess. If I'm wrong, let me know because you're my new best friend. But the per capita GDP on average in this class is probably closer to 30, considering a lot of younger students. If, for the sake of sharing giggles, who am I going to pick on? Bill Gates walked into the room. Per capita billion would be $1 billion apiece now. I check my bank account, nothing happens. Just my personal comment. Just to let you know, if Melinda Gates gets back in touch with me, you know, I'm gone. I'm not coming back. The morbid thing is when I mentioned that to my wife, she said, Bill Gates is he's single now? Oh yeah. What's his number? He might need some love and attention. He's probably consulting himself. Couldn't get mad because I was thinking the same thing with Melinda. I was like, she needs some attention. She's heartbroken now. I'm here. I have a shoulder to cry on.
I think not enough money for either. No. Mm-mm.
True, true. Come on, Ali, that was funny. Sam, nothing?
Sorry,
It was funny.
I was refilling my coffee, so I think I missed the joke. I just got that.
A material. The A material comes out and there no one's here. Everyone's getting a cup of coffee.
I'm sorry.
I thought it was funny, but I was muted laughing.
Could you repeat the joke?
No,
I can-
it's lost its flair. I'm not going to repeat the joke. No,
I'm sorry.
no.
Okay. I was in my coffee then.
I got the same opinion about Oprah Winfrey and a few others. Nominal GDP, measuring our current values in dollars. All right, now we're getting into the fun part. Purchasing power parity. The problem you have when you're doing this, and if you're to international business, you're trying to figure out where you stand and how the country is, or where this other country is, how they match one another. Because you have different currencies, it's impossible to figure out who really has a better per capita GDP. When you include the exchange rates and try to figure out everyone getting paid the same thing, then you figure out purchasing power parity. If you look at that figure, China actually has a larger GDP than the United States. When we get into this, won't be getting into that in this class, but it's something to keep in the back of your mind as far as a business major. What is the purchasing power parity compared to another country? One of the things that they use, econ majors are always looking for some measurement. They're math hawks, surprisingly. They love math. One of the things they use, they tried to come up with something that is ubiquitous to all countries. So one economist, I forgot who it was, decided, let's use something that seems to be fluent everywhere. So they picked the one thing that they thought they could find almost in any major developed country, and that would be the Big Mac. So there is something called the Big Mac Index. Effectively, it states how long it takes the person in that country working to buy a Big Mac. If the Big Mac is $5 in the US, the average minimum wage is $15. It takes 20 minutes. You put that into the equation. You offer some other country and it takes an hour. There's the difference in the purchasing power parity. So if you're doing international business, you want to put this into the equation, whether or not the other country can afford your toys. You want to put this into the equation when you're doing these things internationally. Now that we all seem to be in here, we are well underway. I assume if I were to ask the question, does anybody have any business news, I would get some answers, right?
Yes.
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 Okay, what do we got?
I don't know if it's considered a business, but I hear, I think it was on Fox News about unemployment. There's a few states that are getting rid of the extra $300 that everybody on unemployment was getting from the pandemic. There's like 11 states, and I guess, like I said, I'm not sure if this is considered business or not, but I guess the Republicans are trying to make it seem like Joe Biden said something, and he kind of negated what the Republicans are saying about the unemployment causing a labor shortage. So I thought that was interesting. Fox News is always interesting. They're funny.
Okay, Padawan, let me ask you a question. Did it have anything to do with money?
I mean, yes.
Okay, then it's a business story.
I mean, when you say business, I'm thinking about like companies and little small businesses and things that they're doing. So,
Well,
but you're right.
you
You're
run a
right.
small business. People don't show up when you have a help wanted sign. Therefore, that falls in line. You're on the right path. I'm trying to encourage you not to have the hesitation. That was
Oh, okay.
an excellent. You have hesitation. I'm trying to avoid that. Is that a business story? Yes.
Well, I
Next.
wonder, business story, I see a lot of help wanted signs, particularly at Taco Bell for $14 an hour. So a lot of fast food places. I don't go to fast food a lot, but I've noticed the limited hours because of shortage.
Yeah, the last time I went to Taco Bell, they had a sign. They were paying $17 an hour. I think they were working
Wow.
like 6 hours a day. And they were still like understaffed. Lines, like there's a Taco Bell across the street from my house. There's always like a line just going out to Rochester Road. So it's really crazy.
It is.
Yeah.
It's because they're slow.
They're supposed to be fast.
Yeah, right. It's food. The word fast is misleading. Compared to the death of the sun, yeah, I guess it is relatively fast. And you just call it food. It ain't fast. What else we got?
I saw this in the show before class started, but I also looked up earlier. McDonald's owned U.S. restaurants boost pay to lure new workers, so they're increasing 10% average hourly pay raise in nearly 660 U.S. restaurants.
Good. Long overdue. Really long overdue. That's something hopefully we'll get to in class. And you look at the comparative salaries, that's long overdue. We're getting
What?
into a debate on that one too soon in class. Yes.
I have another one. Well, being that's in my industry, lumber prices have gone up a lot, and it's still not hurting the building industry. There's a lot of people that still want to build.
Supposedly tacking on another $24,000 to the price of a new home.
Right, right. I know, well, I was going to build a new house, but the cost is too much right now. So I do know that it costs more.
You do better off trying to salvage from an old house and just demolish it and take the wood out at this rate. Good
Right.
Lord.
I know.
Kyle, I thought you raised your hand. What do you got for me?
Okay, so I was looking on Yahoo Finance, and I found this story that I think it was 11 of like the top Chinese sellers on Amazon were suspended for using like, they've been doing it for a while, but like dirty tactics like fake reviews. I'm sure you've seen like those fake reviews on like whatever Amazon, they're everywhere. And they just got suspended, I guess. It didn't specify what companies they were, but yeah.
People lying about the reviews on it. I'm shocked. That never happens.
Yeah, right.
Samuel pipes in is $350 billion for state and local aid. Anybody else? What we got?
I found something kind of similar to the like fast food industry. I found an article more specifically on like Chipotle and stuff, and they said how they're raising their wages to like almost getting up to almost $18 an hour, because I know a lot of them near me especially have been closing because they don't have enough staff. So their portions also are like starting to get smaller, and their consumer rate is going down because they're paying so much for their employees. They don't have enough to pay for like all of their supply and stuff.
They'll just raise the price. I don't want to hear that. Yeah. Okay, sure. Anyway, thank you, Emily. Emily, did the article mention any time that they may do something about all that salmonella poisoning they have? I'm wondering because.
I did not see anything about that, but
Okay,
that is
okay.
something that needs to be taken care of.
Yeah.
Yes.
In between you trying to raise the wages, why don't you make sure everything is clean and I don't die? That would be good too. I'm not going back. No. Mm-mm. Once was a mistake. Twice is a habit.
Wait a minute. Did I missed something? You had salmonella twice?
Why we're trying to get people to follow the business section. They got busted for that twice. And people keep going back. And yet there are people afraid of getting a flu shot. Huh? You willing to go back there from food poisoning, but you trying to get a pandemic shot, you hesitant? Explain that to me. Anyway. Anybody else?
Well, I looked up on the Yahoo Finance as well, and I noticed, or I saw the articles, speaking of food prices rising, and mainly because of, I guess, the animals where we get most of the stuff from is they mainly eat like corn, soybeans, and wheat and stuff. And for those items, the prices are rising on those items, which is causing more price inflations, and they saying within the next couple years, if not, things will be definitely much higher than what it is. And that the grain supplies is decreasing, which is causing the increases in prices. And the most food that's been changed since last year is seafood, because everybody is eating seafood now, and they are up 18.7% from last year. So stop eating all the seafood so I could get it cheaper.
It's not the seafood. It's the fact I can't buy chicken wings.
Well, yeah, and they said that the chicken is up because of the not enough labor. So that's why the chicken prices are rising.
It's not prices. I can't find wings, period. No, I'm not joking. Trying to get you to read the business page. There have actually been several stories related to the chicken wing shortage. It's a real thing.
I'll look into it and try to find some if I see some. Let you know.
I don't know, maybe you want to check out the Java Exchange on Facebook. That might be a place to find that news article.
Okay, I'll look at that.
Hey, okay. Anybody else?
I was reading that with tax on gas prices going up, they're speculating that vacations for the summer aren't gonna get derailed because of prices, and that like Six Flags and Disney World are gonna actually be making a lot of money this summer due to that.
Okay, now I'm a little confused the way you structured your story. If fewer people are going out because of high gas prices, how are Six Flags and Disney going to make more money?
Let me see. I'm looking over it again.
Could it be because flights are cheap?
Flights would cost more.
Well, if you buy them now, right now they're cheap.
They're saying that this is coming from the last $10,000 that the government handed out. That there is more money in circulation as of right now for that process to be going on.
But that would be countermanded by the increased fuel cost. Why is fuel gone up?
Because of both pipelines being shut down or closed.
Both? Which other pipeline?
Maybe I'm wrong on that one.
There's that cyber attack.
I know of one. So if you have new news for me, I'm all for it.
No, it's just the Colonial Pipeline.
Okay, I wasn't sure. I thought maybe someone got hacked again.
No, I was wrong on that one.
Let us know about the Colonial Pipeline since you have the mic, sir.
Well, it got hacked, as everyone knows. It's still closed as of right now.
Don't assume everyone knows. This is why I wanted you to explain it.
And
okay.
they opened tonight, I heard.
What happened? Do you know?
A cyber attack happened and leading the pipe to be held for ransom. And that's really all I know about it.
You
looking
gotta
more
type
up.
faster, sir. All right. A pipeline that actually goes from New York all the way down to Houston, Texas, was hacked by what is believed to be a bunch of yahoos in Russia, closing the pipeline down. At least 11 states on the eastern seaboard do not have gas. They are starting to ration it out. From New York straight down through Georgia to Texas, possibly Florida as well. Shows how bad and weak the infrastructure is. The fact that they're arguing over what is considered infrastructure and how to put the money in play in Washington is a bad joke. One of the benefits, whether or not you like green energy, from a selfish standpoint, is you disconnect your energy grid from one big system. You can localize it and avoid this problem. If that's just a trial run, what happens when they decide to hit airports, power plants, water plants? Maybe they need to focus on that. Anyway, good stuff, good stuff. That's just to let you know, I want the stories, but I want some detail. Please just don't read the headlines. I want some details and your views on it. Maybe it relates to something we talked about in class, okay? You are business, most of your business majors, this is good to build up your personal library so you have a base to start with and make some decisions based upon historical information. We already talked about the Big Mac index. This is what it looks like. This is the current cost of a Big Mac depending on the country. Apparently, the cheapest place to get a Big Mac is in Russia. Barring the airfare, yeah. Norway, pardon me, Switzerland, some of these Norwegian countries. South America is actually cheaper to get a Big Mac. The other issue you have is it still using the same ingredients? Mentioned this briefly before. Some countries don't have access to beef and will use lamb. Some use chicken some places. It's a local delicacy and you can use pineapples, whatever it is. It's the other thing as far as production as business. You have to be flexible enough to adjust to the situation. Productivity, measuring how much is actually getting done, how adequately and effectively and efficiently you use the resources available to you. One of the measurements we use a lot is how effective productivity is. One thing that a lot of people try to measure now is the increased productivity. Do we have any accounting majors? No? I used to criticize accounting majors. The more I start to study, the more I've changed my view. You need a accounting class. Econ major. Econ and accounting? No, 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 no. They're not. They both do a lot of math, but no. I'm an econ major. Accounting was never brought up. Where are you going after this, sir? The way they measure profits. Actually, no. Econ measured profits in a slightly different manner because they include the opportunity cost. Accounting majors don't include opportunity cost. Opportunity cost. What accounting course, what economic course included an opportunity cost and said that was just like accounting? Ooh, this could be an interesting. I'm going to leave that alone. We'll table that one, Samuel, for another day. Next week we'll get into econ, where you want to go to college. Now I'm curious just to see what's out there now from when I was studying it. But just close on this. Trust me, I know the difference. Okay, I'm sorry for insulting you, sir. I appreciate. I'm sorry. Accept my deepest apologies. What is opportunity cost? Next week, you're going to tell us what opportunity cost is. Money you make from doing something else. Could be making. Ah, you're thinking like in a business major, not an econ major. Opportunity is not always making money, though. There's the one thing I found interesting in econ. Look the word up, utility, again. Money is never mentioned. Productivity, how much you do with that, and the balance of trade. I'll leave you alone, Samuel, because I was going to pick on the econ major. All right. Quick question in the chat field. Is a trade deficit or surplus? Is one better than the other? A surplus referring to you exporting more goods than you're importing. A negative trade balance refers to you're importing more than you're exporting. Is a negative trade balance a bad thing? Ooh, do I need to pick on somebody? Not sure. An honest answer. That's what I'm looking for. Joey, is it good or bad? Wouldn't say so. Thank you, Luke. It depends. I believe it's bad. Not 100% sure. Could be either. Okay, in my class, if you don't know, just tell me. I appreciate that. Not sure. Could be either way. All right. Remember, first class, I told you, you hit the lottery. You net $50 million after taxes. You took the lump sum. One scenario, again, we have 2 or 3 scenarios with the lottery. What kind of car you want to buy? $50 million in the bank. You know what, Samuel? I was going to pick on you first for this one, just out of curiosity. And he pulls up a McLaren P1. Something nice. No, Hayden. No, that's way too vague. Samuel's got the color and his monogrammed leather seats. I guarantee you that's the kind of detail I'm looking for. 67 blue Mustang with a tan interior. See, that's the kind of detail I want. A Range Rover. No, that's not narrow enough. Tesla, not too narrow, not narrow. They make 3 models. Which one? Model X purple. That's what I'm looking for. A Stingray. A Ferrari 458. Red. Black Porsche 911. Hennessy. Okay, I see you. The Velociraptor. Okay, you get my point. The ones who are picking the foreign cars, is that good or bad due to the trade? The reason the trade balance is not as bad as you think, you're willing to accept an agreement to trade your money for an object. Camaro ZL black, mantle black. Well, you have enough money, I guess the Tesla and the Camaro can go side by side in the garage. All right, good stuff. But some of you went outside the US as far as the car you wanted. And the fact that you did that means you're comfortable with exporting and importing goods and services. The whole idea is to get something either you can't get because of location, or it's actually cheaper to manufacture somewhere else. So you gain that benefit. So the trade balance, in theory, from a purely economic standpoint, is not a bad thing. You willingly got into the business agreement, so you got what you wanted related to money. It is not bad. It just is. Nobody wants a truck, huh? There's one.
I want a truck with
was-
4-wheel drive. I don't care. American built.
I was gonna say the Velociraptor is a tuned Ford Raptor, or So
That's what I thought. I'm thinking Hennessy just modifies cars. So which one? And you said the Velociraptor. It took me a minute to figure that out.
yeah, they modified the name too. Like Velociraptor instead of Raptor. So
Well, you have to have the truck to tow the stuff. You see, at this point, if you're going to get a car that can only be ran at the track, you have to have something to tow it to the track. It's kind of what I was thinking. Besides, I don't want to run a Ferrari in rain. Not happening.
Or snow.
Or snow. Wherever you live, it's going to rain at the very least. If there's snow, it's definitely not seeing snow. Okay, quickly, debt. Money borrowed from a nation to pay its creditors. The U.S. is also nicknamed the debtor nation. Nobody has more debt per capita than the U.S. Little trivia. I think it holds true. I'm sure you'd be kind enough to check this out, anyone curious enough. As far as I know, the U.S. is the only country with a 30-year mortgage. The 30-year mortgage was invented because interest rates were quite high And in order to sell homes, they decided to spread the bill out. Now we're getting back into the area of me being your financial advisor for the next 7 weeks. Debt is a bad thing. Money makes an excellent servant, but an awful master. So the fact that they're trying to get you into a 30-year mortgage lets you know. The other part about that is if you go to most car sites right now, the default is 68 months to pay for a car. That'll tell you something. Somebody just wants you to get into debt. We did talk about real GDP and purchasing power parity, Big Mac index. Balance of debt. You'll notice the one exception when the debt actually dropped, 2008, the financial crisis. I assume, again, it's more of a younger crowd. My morning classes generally have a younger crowd. Let's see, that would put you max at 24. That would put you 13, 14. I assume most of you weren't paying attention to the financial news at that moment. You may have been affected by it, but I don't think you were paying attention to it. Okay, I will also try to get around to this during our time in here, at least get some information so we can watch about that. Just a quick note, all you business majors, I suggest you get up to speed on that. You'll notice the last day in class is movie. Yeah, I have a movie for the entire thing. At least get you some foundational material so you can talk intelligently about this. You want to know about that. Fortunately, a dire time, but you have the benefit of having so much of this recorded, better than in any other time in history. So. And you'll notice there is a direct relation. The economy does well, plenty of debt. You're looking at this changing, and hopefully this is just a harbinger for future things. You, the next generation, won't get into as much debt. Debt is your enemy. Better to be the lender than the borrower. Economic conditions, stability, that is key. I don't care what else goes on. Everyone wants a stable economy. Nobody likes to get into an economic situation where there's a lot of fluctuations. A stable government, a stable money supply, it's boring. If you're investing, you're looking for volatility. If you're actually selling a good or product, you don't want volatility, you want stability. Inflation. There are two forms of inflation. One, this is more of an economic term. Demand push. We talked about supply and demand before. A supply push. Demand is when you want something, supply is when you bring it to marketplace. A demand pull inflation refers to too much money chasing too few goods. Everyone's got deep pockets and we're all trying to buy the same thing. That just drives the price up. Everyone in the room has a great deal of money, but there's only one pot of land. We all bid for it. So in this case, if Kyle is the one who owns the land, he was originally selling it for 25 grand. 15 people come up and they all bid 25 grand. He's going to take the highest bid at this point. We're driving the price up. A supply push. This goes back to what they believe is finally going to be the cause of inflation due to the pandemic, scarce resources driving everything up. We mentioned lumber. The reason lumber goes up is twofold. One is you have people who are not at work to go harvest the lumber. The other side is you have a lot of people who have been at home for over a year, and what they decided to do is, oh, let me remodel the house. Or you have people who now are moving. I don't need to be in New York. I'd rather go get a house. And the cost of an apartment in New York is more than equivalent to you getting 4 times the square footage of a house. So now you see buildings starting to start at the higher end. Building on the lower end, no. This is building on the higher end. The housing crutch is on the higher end of the monetary spectrum. You're not going to see this on the poor end. They're just going to be priced out. There's the other side of that they don't talk about. And this mammoth inflation, I'm not worried about that. That's not going to happen. We still haven't seen what's going to happen to the people who couldn't afford their rent and are going to be losing their apartments or houses. When that falls through, then tell me about inflation. Unemployment level, getting a little bit into what the Federal Reserve and the Treasury try to do. Every country, every large country has a central bank. Ours is called the Federal Reserve. Everywhere else, it's the Bank of England, Bank of China, Bank of Japan, whatever. Most of them have something they call a target rate. In the US, I know it's a target rate on inflation and unemployment and growth. They try to target all three. Normally it is inflation and growth. 2 of the 3 I keep forgetting. The 3 things that the Federal Reserve is trying to control happen to be unemployment, inflation, and the growth rate in the country. I believe it's inflation and the growth rate. Anyway, quick definition of inflation, unemployment. You take in everyone who has the ability to work. That's your denominator. Your numerator is everyone who does not have a job. Understand that that is a very loose term because if you work 1 hour per week, you are technically employed. A better definition would be to include the underemployed, those who would be willing to get more hours but cannot find them. A recession is considered 2 quarters of declining economic growth, or GDP. A depression is 6 quarters of the decline in GDP. So 6 months or 18 months. In the last 100 years, there's only been 1 depression. A recession, there have been several, the most noted 2008, because it was quite severe and no one believed that the housing market would ever crash. That's another story. Yeah, it didn't happen on its own. How the economy is managed, again, I keep getting a little bit ahead of myself because of the way my mind is working. Managing all of this, and I'm on page 26 and 27 in your textbook. We're on slide 42. Those who are looking to do research, FRED stands for Federal Reserve Education something. I forgot. It's from St. Louis. You ever go in there and you need some data, you can get a ton of data in there. We mentioned this briefly. Fiscal policy refers to what Congress does as far as taxes and spending. You can speed up and slow the economy down by doing those 2 things, or some combination of the 2. Essentially, you're trying to keep inflation low, growth rate at a reasonable rate, and then unemployment at a reasonable rate. What is known as the natural rate of unemployment is anything below 5%. There is no unemployment in theory below 5%. You start to worry about it anything over about 6.8. Going back to what we discussed, I assume most of you work as well. You hit the lottery. In the chat field, this is always entertaining to me. Who's going back to work? You hit the lottery, you net 50 mil. Who's going back to work? Not right away. One I would. Luke, we need to talk. Crystal, we need to talk.
No, if I didn't work, I'd be bored to death.
I might. Joey, we're gonna put you in the group too. You three have issues. Emily, yeah, I see the room is gonna be very full. I like the way you people are thinking. All right, Joey, let me tell you what's going to happen. You're going to walk into wherever you work, the 50 million buck. Why wouldn't I go back to help? All right, Luke, so you want to jump to the head of the line. Wouldn't it be better economically to let somebody else get the job then? You don't need the money. Wouldn't that stimulate the economy? Someone who's unemployed, you're in the way, aren't you?
Yeah, but I don't know. I've always had like the mentality and been raised that I need to work for my money. So that's just been ingrained into me. So that's just like more of my personal preference, I guess.
Okay. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to go to work. Someone's going to say, good morning, and you're going to get upset. What do you mean by that? What do you mean, good morning? I don't like the way you said that. You now have the option to leave at any point in time you want. It's not going to work. You pulling up to work in that, what did you list as far as a car? Let me go look that up.
The 67 Mustang.
$100,000 car. You're going to go to work. No. No, you're not.
I see where you're coming from now.
What about if you own your own business?
Then it's a hobby.
Okay, it's a hobby.
Here's my statement to those of you who are kidding yourself. You're not kidding me. You're kidding yourself. You're not going to go back to work because the minute somebody pisses you off, you're gone. You have the option. And you can't tell me that somebody in your job does not upset you with their very existence on the planet. Somebody in their very existence needs to be, if you had the Infinity Gauntlet, you illustrate them only. Somebody in that office. If you're looking for something to do, why don't you devote some of that money, time, and expertise into a charity? Luke, you're supposed to work, and not necessarily monetarily. This gets back to the argument we got into with Samuel, or the discussion. Let me not use the word argument. The discussion. The word utility is in the beginning of every econ book I've ever taught. It refers to you finding pleasure or satisfaction with some activity, not money. When I eliminate money from the equation, I'll ask you all the question, what do you want to do? Eliminate the money aspect. I've given you $50 million. Ask yourself, what do you want to do? And if the idea of where you work now is what you want to do, okay, I guarantee you, when you started, that wasn't on the list. Not with some of you talking about getting a Hennessy Velociraptor. No, you're not going to work with a Velociraptor. No, 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 no. A Ferrari, black Porsche. No, you're not going to work. Go do a charity. You need to keep busy. If that's the issue, find a charity. You will become fulfilled. You're helping others. There are plenty of charities that need plenty of help and also need the financial backing. I guarantee you, you'll find something to do. You might go back to school to learn how to manage the charity better. That you might do. Stabilizing. Again, you want a level government issue to deal with. What we learned today: business, internal, external differences, global production, supply and demand. All business students need to learn about supply and demand. Why I think you should take at least one economic course. All right, any questions on that? All right. No, 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 don't need that, don't need that. Here's the one. How are we looking for time? Okay, how many slides in this one? 44. Understanding business ethics and social responsibility. All right, do I want to? So many corrupt things to talk about. Who do I want to pick on? Enron. From the short pictures that I've seen, I'm the only one with enough gray to actually talk about Enron. I had a bad hair day. That's why I'm wearing a hat. That and I'm a Spartan fan. All right. Those who have got the textbook and read ahead, chapter 2 actually gets into a lot of people who are doing a lot of bad things. So before we get into it, I'm going to bring up one. There are many in here. They went through a ton. Enron, Skilling, Bernie Madoff, Wells Fargo. They need several videos on those clowns. More Bernie Madoff, insider trading and people who screwed that up. So Volkswagen, Mercedes-Benz, Siemens, all kind of ethical problems. There's some good stuff in there. I'm going to cover this one and then we're going to get through this chapter, and I'll bring some more up because I think they're entertaining. Okay, more for educational purposes is about 15 minutes. Just bringing in some old information so you, again, build up your personal library as business managers. This is stuff you want to look out for. And it puts you in an unusual and difficult situation if you're the one who has to actually be in a company like Enron.
You could take your ulcerative colitis treatment in a different direction. Talk to your doctor about Xeljanz, a pill, not an injection or infusion. For a
bit of trivia. The United States is the only country in the world that allows pharmaceutical companies to advertise. Yeah. If you're wondering why the cost of pharmaceuticals cost more in the United States, those who don't know, I'll give you an example. Insulin in the United States is $100 an injection. In Canada, it's $8. You know anyone taking insulin? Yeah, ask about that one. And since you're a business major, if you look at the balance sheet and you can pull up an annual report on any large company, they have to file it by law. There's a section for advertising. Ask yourself this question while you're seeing all this advertising for pharmaceuticals. Since you cannot go get it over the counter, why do they do so much advertising? You can't subscribe it yourself. Ask yourself, why are you advertising something I cannot get on my own?
Hi, welcome to another Cold Fusion video. It's a distant fact now, but Enron was once the 7th largest corporation in America. They revolutionized trading and the energy market. They were far smarter than their competitors, and their business was intricate and too complex for the average person to understand. Except, in reality, it was all a big scam filled with lies, fraud, and political manipulation. Enron was the biggest scam in US history. The fallout from the scam was monumental. Billions of dollars stolen, thousands of lost jobs, dozens of convictions, one suicide, and the unveiling of a very public display of corporate greed that shined directly into the heart of corporate America. This is the story of how one company took 10 years to grow to $60 billion in value, and then, in less than a month, go bankrupt. This is the story of Enron.
You are watching Cold Fusion TV.
Enron began as an energy supply company mainly dealing with natural gas. Eventually, the company moved on to trading, making energy deals in power, and then later moving on to broadband and even trading the weather. They were Wall Street's darling, the company that could never lose, and its stock price kept growing year on year. The company was also well connected politically. For example, Enron was the single biggest contributor to the George W. Bush campaign. Bush even called Kenneth Lay, the founder of Enron, Kenny Boy. And it's with Kenny Boy that the story starts. Growing up in a poor family, Kenneth Lay's father was a Baptist priest. The young Ken would often ponder about his future, a future where he could escape his current conditions. When he grew up, he became a prominent figure in the deregulation of the energy sector. The PhD graduate spent his time as a financial analyst in the Pentagon before climbing the ranks and becoming close friends with George Bush Sr. Ken Lay would even send the Enron corporate jet to take George Sr. and his wife to their son's inauguration. As you'll see later, these favors did not go unreturned. The first red flag for founder of the company, Kenneth Lay, that something was wrong within the company came during the Valhalla scandal of 1987. Two oil traders working for Enron gambled enormously on the company's behalf, shifting money to fake accounts with names such as MY-Arse or My-Arse. Worried auditors told Lay that they found the two traders moving money into their own accounts, manipulating earnings, and gambling on trades beyond their capacity. But instead of firing the two rogue traders, Lay made no changes. Didn't seem to matter what they were doing, as long as they were making the company money. Enron even sent them a letter saying, "Please keep making us millions." Later, the two were convicted of fraud. Ken Lay acted shocked, saying that he was not aware of their reckless gambling and theft. But as revealed later, he actually encouraged it. One of the convicted traders was sent to jail for a year, and this gave Ken Lay a big problem. one of his main moneymakers was behind bars, and he needed someone new to bring in cash. Enter Jeffrey Skilling.
I saw the life inside, so shine bright.
Who will you make happy today?
Skilling, Enron's new CEO, was Lay's biggest asset. When he arrived at Enron, he started moving the company in a new direction. Skilling wanted to turn Enron from a gas supply company into a stock market for natural gas. He also introduced the company to mark-to-market accounting, an idea that would allow the company to fraudulently reap billions. So mark-to-market accounting simply allows the company to write down profits in their books on the day that the deal was signed. This meant that if Enron signed a deal worth $50 million over the next 10 years, they could write $50 million in their books that day, despite not receiving a penny. It didn't even matter if the deal fell through. Effectively, this meant that the company was worth more on paper than it had actually earned. The deals were often subjective. They could be worth whatever Enron thought they were worth. When the Security and Exchange Commission approved the accounting trick of mark-to-market for Enron, the office celebrated. They knew that this was the key to making billions. Meanwhile, Skilling was known for his Darwinian philosophy, survival of the fittest. His favorite book, The Selfish Gene, describes how greed and competition motivate human nature. At Enron, Skilling wanted to unlock these instincts in his employees. One way he did this was grading all employees on a scale of 1 to 5, with 1 being the best and 5 being the worst. The thing was, 10% of all employees had to be graded a 5, and when you were graded a 5, you were fired. This created the competition that Skilling was looking for. People began to work 18 hours a day and were ruthless in their efforts to earn the company as much money as possible. Skilling famously said that money was the only thing that motivated people. Unsurprisingly, Skilling was a massive risk taker. He often went on wild adventures with other Enron executives. This includes dirt biking on dangerous trails where people often flip their cars. An executive even required stitches after a biking accident on one of these trips. Skilling said he liked guys like this, guys with a bit of edge. Lau Pai, a mild-mannered executive, was one of these guys with a bit of edge. Skilling called Lau Pai his ICBM, Intercontinental Ballistic Missile. He was CEO of an Enron subsidiary and seemed to be motivated by 2 things: money and strippers. Pai is an as mysterious figure as one can be in such a huge scandal. He left Enron in 2001 with $250 million and became the second largest landowner in Colorado. He left his business division with $1 billion of losses and escaped the whole scandal pretty much intact. Pai would come back later into this story, a few decades after the dust settles.
Enron Online will change the markets for many, many commodities. It is creating an open, transparent marketplace that replaces the dark, blind system that existed. It is real simple. You turn on your computer and it's right there. And if you want to do business, you push the button. That's our vision. We're trying to change the world.
And it wasn't just internet companies feeling the fever. Enron's stock had tripled in the space of 2 years. Everyone with a little bit of spare cash was playing the stock market game. Enron knew that as long as the company met or exceeded analysts' expectations, the stock price would keep rising. And somehow, they always met or exceeded those expectations. During this time, while Jeff Skilling stood at the company's conventions telling his staff to put more of their 401k into Enron, he knew that the profits were actually going in the opposite direction. Around the world, they were losing billions on natural gas projects. Enron had poured billions of dollars into a plant in India, only to realize that India couldn't afford to buy the electricity. The site lay in ruins, but that didn't stop the executives at Enron writing down future profits for the project into their books and handing themselves massive bonuses. The analysts, the very people who were supposed to stop the corruption, fell under the spell of Skilling. The complexity of the company and the charisma of Skilling made analysts simply take him at his word. In fact, the ones that didn't were fired. The company soon began trading bandwidth after some dot-com inspiration. They made a deal with Blockbuster to provide streaming services, but the technology just simply didn't work well enough yet. The deal fell through, but Enron still wrote $53 million in their books for it. Things began to get out of control, and Enron soon began trading weather. Yes, the weather, like sunshine and rain. They would soon sell futures on the weather, essentially gambling what the temperature would be. You would probably imagine that most people would be skeptical of this, but it was activities like this that led Enron to being listed on the Fortune 500's most innovative companies list. But one reporter at Fortune would soon start asking questions, and this would later lead to the company's demise. Bethany McLean, a reporter at Fortune, was doing a piece on Enron. She had a phone call with John Skilling where she asked some simple questions like, how exactly does Enron make its money? Skilling said he couldn't answer because he wasn't an accountant, so he sent a few finance guys, including Andy Fustow, the CFO, to answer her questions the next day. They sat in the office for 3 hours poring over documents. At the end, as others had left the room, Andy turned to the reporter and said, "I don't care what you write about the company, just don't make us look bad." Andy Fustow was a character described as having no moral compass. He made Enron debts disappear by moving them to shell companies so that on paper, Enron was profitable. He even set up his own fraudulent firm just to buy Enron assets. This fraudulent firm was called LJM. Andy would later convince 96 bankers to invest in the scam LJM firm. LJM would make Andy Fustow $45 million, but it seemed that the banks were in on the deal too. Merrill Lynch bought 3 Nigerian barges from Enron and sold them back 5 months later. This was to help Enron cook their books, and later, several bankers would go to jail for this. Both Skilling and Lay knew that even this couldn't last forever. They needed a new gold mine. And then, they turned their eyes to the Golden State, California. Now,
our Confident Forever plan is possible with a CFP professional.
A CFP professional can help you build a complete financial plan. Visit letsmakeaplan.org to find your CFP professional.
Skilling became increasingly volatile, arriving at work unshaved and red-eyed. On a 2001 investor's call, he even called an investor an a-hole. A brash reaction from a Fortune 500 CEO. The pressure was getting to him. The company had to keep making quarterly targets despite their businesses failing at home and abroad. California was going to be their next big score. Enron merged with Pacific Gas and Electric, which gave them access to the Californian grid. Once this was achieved, strange things began to happen. In the newly deregulated electricity market of California, rolling blackouts became common. But strangely, the state had almost double the capacity than there was demand. So why was this happening? It turns out Enron traders were manipulating the market. They moved electricity out of state to increase demand, and when the price got high enough, they would move it back in. They even called power plants and asked them to make excuses to shut down for a few hours, increasing the price as there was less demand. Traders had energy maps and the control to move the energy. They knew exactly how to squeeze every last dollar from the people of California. While the state faced blackouts causing unknown tolls on the lives of Californians, the Enron traders were high-fiving themselves over their bonuses. Ken Lay even said, "It doesn't matter how many rules you Californians make, I got a bunch of smart people here that will figure out how to make money anyway." The year-long ordeal would cost California $30 billion. But why didn't the state put a stop to it? Well, the law states that it's a federal government issue, and it's their responsibility to take care of it. And guess who the president was at the time? That's right, Lay's good friend, George W. Bush. Bush refused to step in, saying that it was his administration's belief that intervention would not solve anything. The Federal Energy Regulation Commission also didn't step in until the Senate forced them to. The chairman of the commission was personally recommended by Kenneth Lay. This whole ordeal caused the people of California to turn on their governor and appoint a new one that was more suitable for the role, the Terminator. One day in 2001, out of the blue, Skilling suddenly resigned. Perhaps he figured he could leave the company years before it imploded. Then he could say, well, it was fine when I left it. Regardless, Kenneth Lay took over the CEO role. Just one day later, Sharon Watkins, who worked under the company CFO Andrew Fostow, sent a letter to Kenneth Lay detailing the staggering amount of corruption and fraud that she'd found within the company. The Wall Street Journal would write a piece about some of Andy's dealings, and soon, the SEC would launch an informal inquiry. At this point, investors began to feel nervous. Kenneth Lay tried to bring calm and reassurance to investors and employees. While he was addressing the company's issue to a speech to employees, just several blocks away, Enron's accounting firm was busy shredding documents. One of the accounting firms shredded 1 ton of paper on October the 23rd, but it was too late. The walls began to fall, and over the course of a month, the company went from that healthy appearance of one of the leading innovators to total bankruptcy.
You want us to believe that you sat there in your office and and had no clue that this place was about to collapse?
On the day I left, on August 14th, 2001, I believed the company was in strong financial condition. I did not do anything wrong that was not in the interest, and all the time that I worked for Enron Corporation, that was in the interest of the shareholders of the company. If I could go back and redo things, I would not. Now.
For the thousands of people who held Enron stock, the market was frozen at the $32 mark, and when it reopened, it was $9 a share. Meanwhile, Enron executives had a fire sale of all of their stock. In the months leading up to the bankruptcy, Skilling told his employees to buy more stock while he sold all of his. As the media began circling the story, criminal investigations were launched. Cliff Baxter, a trader who often went on Skilling's wild adventures, cashed in $30 million from Enron. After being called to testify in court, Baxter got in his Mercedes, drove down a quiet street, and shot himself. Andy Fostow, the former CFO, pleaded guilty to conspiracy to commit wire fraud. He ratted out and cut himself a deal to testify against other Enron executives. He was sentenced to 10 years but only served 6 and paid $23 million in fines. Enron's accounting firm, Arthur Andersen, the one that shredded 1 ton of paper, was convicted of obstructing justice. America's oldest accounting firm collapsed due to the loss of reputation. 29,000 people lost their jobs. Ken Lay earned $300 million from Enron. He was found guilty of 10 counts of securities fraud and was facing 45 years in prison, but died of a heart attack a month before his sentencing. 20,000 people at Enron lost their jobs and medical insurance, with an average severance pay of only $4,500. Executives were paid $55 million during the bankruptcy and cashed a further $774 million in the year before the collapse. Skilling, the mastermind behind Enron, was convicted of 19 counts of security and wire fraud. He was sentenced to 24 years and $180 million in fines. While in jail, his parents and his son passed away. He only served 12 years of his 24-year sentence and was released in early 2019. But this isn't where the story ends. Skilling is hoping that he can get a second chance. He appears to be plotting a return to the energy sector. Only 2 months after his prison release in early 2019, Skilling was entered as a manager of a new company which he founded a few years ago. Lau Pai, the former Enron executive who sailed off into the sunset with his $250 million, is reported to be helping Skilling regain connections and funding. According to the Wall Street Journal, Skilling has been holding meetings with former Enron executives in relation to starting a new venture. This may be difficult for him as obviously his reputation has been massively smeared. But apart from people's perception, there's technically nothing stopping him. The SEC has banned Skilling from being an officer of any public company, so as long as his venture stays private, he can do whatever he wants. So that is the story of Enron, with a not so typical ending. Despite being one of the biggest players in the biggest scam in US history, resulting in billions of dollars in losses for average people, tens of thousands of lost jobs, and executives reaping in billions, Skilling is out of jail and free to start again. Enron's motto was Ask Why. During its astronomical rise, it seemed that no one bothered to ask why, how, or where the money was coming from. And now, with Skilling out of jail and trying to re-enter the business world, maybe once again, we should ask, why? So that wraps up our look at Enron. Thanks for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you want to see stuff like this, or much more, you should definitely consider subscribing to this channel. If you want to see my last video on business fraud, which was the Theranos story, I'll leave a link for that after this. Interestingly enough, Elizabeth Holmes' dad was a former executive at Enron. I'll say no more.
There we go. Now you can hear me rant. Any questions?
No, sir.
Any thoughts?
I think it's kind of crazy that, you know, he was able to start again after screwing so many people over.
Yeah. My thoughts exactly. Just a side note, any of you ever bring up Bitcoin and you wonder why I'm hesitant? I got plenty of material. This is one. What's wrong with Bitcoin? Go back to this chapter. Business ethics, which in some cases is a bad pun in and of itself. Beginning of the chapter, it talks about where most of cocoa leaves or beans come from in small countries. Oddly enough, they are still considered being in poverty. The wages are below what would be considered by the World Economic Forum. They would be considered below the poverty level. And yet you still pay an arm and a leg for a bit of candy. Interesting that the money does not go to the bottom, but simply floats to the top. Again, having a little gray hair, I remember when the candy bar was $1. The candy bar might still be $1, but it's about half the length. The candy bar used to be a full-size candy bar. Now it's still the same price. It's just shrinking. And I still ask the question, okay, if the farmers aren't getting it, I'm paying more for it. Somebody explain to me where the math is, because I don't get it. We're getting into the question of whether or not this is an ethical thing to do. Exploitation of people in different areas. This is a pretty interesting comment. Social commentary. They are still talking about the word slavery and child labor. Picking coffee, pardon me, coca. Probably doing that on coffee as well. On page 40, your textbook gets into this. The bottom line versus what is general benefit or general social welfare. Since people have that negative connotation when you put the word welfare in there, how about social good? Critics like Simon suggest that sellers of fair trade products are taking advantage of customers who are socially but not practically price conscious, charging more for a bit of chocolate simply because they say it's socially sustainable, et cetera, et cetera. The question is, are the people on the other end getting a better financial outlook because of such actions? You could be getting it from a reputable place, but the question is, are the employees paid a fair wage? Purchasing price parity, are they getting paid a fair wage where they are at? Introduction, we're going to look at ethical and social responsibility and what does that mean? You are living in the age of more and more social responsibility. I assume many of you know who Warren Buffett is. Gentleman who in theory can do no wrong. However, when he was asked questions about social responsibility at the last annual meeting, his comment was, that's outside our range. The company is designed strictly to do business and business only, which I found rather interesting considering he's already said when he dies, his children will not be getting the bulk of his wealth. He will have charities set up to take it. But you're not concerned with social responsibility now. I find that interesting. How do you equate all of this? There's a distinct difference between shareholders and stockholders. The stockholders are the ones who have direct ties to the company financially. Shareholders are everyone the company interacts with, which includes stockholders. So now we're getting to the issue of what is your responsibility as a company to everybody who was involved. This is an interesting and newer field in business. This is where ESG comes in, environment, social, and governance. This is a sub-major over in the finance area. And it has picked up quite a bit of steam because we have exceeded the Gilded Age, the Victorian age, where you, in theory, have a responsibility to others as you are making a profit. Still going back to our other discussion, you hit the lottery for $50 million. What do you want to do with the money? If you're looking for activities, there are a plethora of things you could do. I'm sure there are plenty of charities would like an extra hand. You don't have to work. There are things that you could do that would be socially constructive. There are plenty of people that need a hand. Learning objectives, we'll talk about our personal code, the workplace code, social responsibilities, et cetera, et cetera. Identify the general responsibilities that you should have, explain the government's role, discuss the business's management, social responsibility in informal and formal terms. I'm surprised, well, newer books are probably going to get into the social issues that we have now. Do you side one way or another with certain political issues? Many we could get into, but I'm going to save that for another day. You decide where you want to stand on those. We might get into a little bit of it, but we can put that on the back burner for another day. Pure ethics. What is right and wrong depending on the social situation? What is right and wrong depending on your culture? What is legitimate in one culture is not legitimate in another. for the sake of this class, the way I'm going to define this, culture is your group. Social is your group's interaction with everybody else. If you see the term social culture, social culture, it's the interaction between your group and everyone else. And shorten this up, what is ethical? If you have an issue with that and you don't know, ask yourself one question. Could you put it up on Facebook? Could you legitimately tell everyone what you are doing? If you can't, then you have an issue. And I just love the fact that the directors of Enron were straight up lying to people in Congress. Everything we did was for the benefit of the shareholders. If you're referring to shareholders, referring to yourself, I believe that. This is where we get into unusual issues. Business ethics. Now we have a different sort of issue. What you can do around your friends is not necessarily what is in the best interest of certain business ethics. There are also business rules, which is close to ethics, but it's a little different, written and unwritten. Just because you can do it doesn't mean you should do it. Business ethics may actually allow you to do it, but it does not immediately mean that your personal ethics should allow you to do certain things. There are plenty of things I could have done business-wise that were ethical from the business's standpoint. From my personal standpoint, they were unethical. Your personal ethical beliefs, again, based upon your social structure. Anything that falls outside your social structure is considered unethical behavior. If you want to know why certain things go on, you have to understand in certain places that is ethically acceptable, in other places it is not. We'll go back to our beginning statement in this chapter. The term slave labor, I'm taking that literally because I believe that's what it was. And it still may be there as far as people having the, I don't know, it's socially acceptable to keep people, to have them pick coca leaves, coca beans, I mean. Okay. Throughout society, almost every social construct has had some form of forced labor. In certain places in the world, they still do. It is considered ethical behavior, which is a scary thought. Managerial ethics. Now we're getting into the business section, and I'm on page 41. I'm on slide 8. What is actually considered beneficial for your business? Now we're getting into how you apply some of these things. The managerial ethics. Managers are in a particular situation because they are the bridge between the executive board and the average employee. You are the middle ground. In theory, you are supposed to serve two masters, which is very difficult all the time. Typically, you tend to serve the board more than you do the employees. How do you wish to have the benefit, the relationship with your employees? Also, the organization, that would be the others. High up. Back to that term, economical agents. The agent refers to the actor pardon me, the agent is the people who hire the principal. The principal is the person who's taking care of the actions. The agents are the ones who hire them. If you hire me as your financial advisor because you hit the lottery, I am the principal. You are the agent. My goal is to look after your best interest, explain to you how that is accomplished, etc., etc. It's the same vein as the manager. You have to look at the employees, the organization as a whole, and everyone else you interact with, which would be the general public and those type of things that come involved with that. Behavior towards your employees in 3 broad categories, and those are the ones that we have there. How you handle that as far as the employees, and this is where we get into the Enron being mentioned in your textbook. How do you wish to handle this? You're paying attention to that. Managers were encouraging people to buy Enron stock, although they knew it was a time bomb. Obviously, that's not ethical behavior. The whole act wasn't ethical behavior. So you simply slipping down that slope of, no, you need to invest more in the Enron stock. It's guaranteed. It will never die. Okay. There's your financial lesson for today. Diversification is key. Do not trust into one company. Back to my comment related to cyber currency. I won't say Bitcoin, I'll say cyber currency because now more of them are popping up every day. Buyer beware. There's a conflict of interest between the employee and the employee at all times. What you are looking for and you taking care of the others. The interest of the principal and agent. And here your textbook talks about Bernie Madoff. Because these are one person, not organizations, but Ken Skilling tended to be a unique figure. That's why I pulled that one up. The Bernie Madoff and the Thanos also probably be pretty good. We'll have that in a couple of weeks. Those who are familiar with Bernie Madoff, he embezzled somewhere between $5 billion and $50 billion, depending on which accounting method you want to use. A little too far. Assessing what is ethical behavior, which is an interesting trick. The idea is to gather as much information as possible, determine whether this is morally acceptable. Again, a simple definition is do no harm. Is someone harmed by your actions? There's where you should go. Then you make an ethical judgment. Is this right or wrong? Sometimes it is not clean cut. Sometimes it is just in the best interest of one way or the other. You are on city council. You have the deciding vote. The city has asked for a grant. They have a grant of $10 million. They can either build a daycare or a senior care. There is no right or wrong. Which one do you want to build? Keep that in mind because I might throw that out as a discussion question. Neither is a bad idea, but the one you don't pick, there will be a group angry at you. You don't have unlimited resources. Economics 101, you have unlimited wants, but limited resources. If nothing else, the major resource we are all constricted by is time, most valuable resource you have, which goes back to day one as far as our discussions. Why are you here? there's an opportunity cost. The opportunity for nothing else is time. You could be sleeping, you could be working. There's always an opportunity cost. It's not necessarily monetarily on the other end, though. As a matter of fact, there's always an opportunity cost. You have a group of friends, one are going to a concert, one are going out to eat. The opportunity cost is missing the other one. It's not a monetary issue. It's a, what do you want to do? Supposedly this dinner is a great gala, reunion, people you haven't seen in years, or a concert of a band you haven't heard from in a while. Opportunity cost on both. It's not always monetary, which is what I'm just trying to get to you. So keep that in mind as well, especially with the value judgment. You will be in situations where both are valid and you'll just be seen as the villain, or both are wrong and you have to figure out which one is less wrong. Put yourself in Enron. Do you report this and contribute to 26,000 people losing their job? Or do you let this lie continue? There is no right decision. And there's our term once again, utility. You find some benefit or pleasure, not money. Remember, the word benefit does not mean money. If you do any volunteering, you find utility in it. And realistically, if you volunteer, they're making money from you. Instead of hiring somebody to have you do it for free, there's money being exchanged one way or another. What are the individual's rights against the group? There's another issue that you have to face as far as ethics goes. What is just and fair? Define justice. Whose justice? What definition of it? I'm gonna have to find a new question to ask since the tide is slipping more towards the other direction. But again, do you believe that college should be free, or at least through the associate's degree? Before the argument is, why should I pay for something I don't use? Or if I'm not going to school, why am I paying for it? Legitimate argument. I could take that argument up one more notch. I don't have any children in K through 12. My kids are grown. Why am I paying for K through 12? The counter argument is it benefits society as a whole. You won't see it directly, but if it benefits society as a whole, you will get a benefit in another manner. That's the general argument. Getting back to why did we stop at K through 12? Why don't we carry it all the way through? Who's going to pay for it, et cetera, et cetera. We can get into that. But the counter argument is legitimate. Why should I pay for that? I'm not going to use it and it doesn't benefit me. Practices in individual companies. Gathering the information, then we go down our checklist. Who utilizes? What are the rules and regulations in there? Is this actually a just act? Are we actually looking beyond just X's and O's? We analyze, is this something that has some type of value to it, to the company or morally? Your moral values and the company values don't always align. And by that, I mean, just because you can do it doesn't mean you should. There's an example that it is legal to put in coal ash and to dump it near the plant. Morally, should you do it? Legally, you can. Morally, should you? This is where you get into the ethical judgment issue, whether or not it's something that you should do just because you can do. Those are two different things. Companies generally have some type of written structures they adapt. I'll ask the hypothetical question. Just because it's not written, should you do it? Think about that long and hard. Should you do it just because it's not written? Those with children understand that interesting dilemma. I don't have a list of rules in a handbook. I'm counting on common sense, and children don't have common sense. It seemed like a good idea at the time. Okay. Some of you know the person. It seemed like a good idea at the time. Usually the police are involved. Maybe you are the person. At the very least, I'm sure you have a friend who thought that was a good idea at the time, right up until the police arrived. Hell, it wasn't written anywhere. Just because it isn't written doesn't mean it's not a rule. From a company standpoint, what are the unwritten rules? The unwritten rules are the ones that are instituted by the company's ethics. What you should and should not do. There are a bunch of little written and unwritten rules in companies. If you have to spell them out, that might be the issue. You assume that everyone knows the written and unwritten rules. How you handle that as a manager is the issue. One issue you might run into is the dress code. How do you handle the dress code? There are certain things about the dress code I remember when I was a financial advisor, I learned very quickly. The one that I will never let go is the fact that at all circumstances and all issues, you wear a t-shirt. If I ever see someone without a t-shirt underneath their dress shirt, I cringe. I don't understand how you can do it. It makes no sense to me. But I'm sure that it's not a written in a dress code. Most of the time it's not. It's just understood. That's what you do. Usually there are things that come in and become the cultural norm. Even if you're not familiar with it or comfortable with it, then it tends to bleed out. You as a manager, again, the Java Cafe manager, how do you tell people about the dress code? Under that would bother me. There's obviously going to be a uniform at the Java Cafe. Yeah, if I need to spell it out, I will. If I need to write it out in the dress code, I will. You must wear a t-shirt underneath that polo shirt. This isn't up for debate. Now, if you're working somewhere and there's a polo style shirt, like an Apple store, you can put on any t-shirt you want. If you are in a business environment, it has to be a clean white t-shirt. It can't have your favorite band in there because people will see it through a white shirt. No. You have a cultural issue. You need to address it. You cannot wear that with that. If you have to put in the rules, that means the person isn't properly knowledgeable about business rules. Clean shaven. You decide about facial hair, normally around food. I'm not fond of it, but hey, at the very least, it needs to be trimmed. well. Then you run into the issue of whether or not people are dressed in an appropriate manner for a particular area. In the business section the other day, a woman supposedly was kicked out of an amusement park or whatever it was because her shorts were too short. Business code, define it. It's socially unacceptable. There probably was no code in the handbook about people coming in there with shorts that are too short. And I'm noticing this more and more. Customers, students coming to school and things that are seen as provocative and being told to go home and dress again. Occasionally, students will come to school with shirts with profanity on them and told you need to go home. Okay, who's going to be in charge of that? These are the kind of issues that you get to face. Congratulations, you signed up. Just the overall social responsibility, how you conduct it, and with whom. We talked about this a little bit. There's internal and external. Everybody you have in contact with, you have a social responsibility. Internally, that would be management, that would be employees, that would be suppliers and direct customers. Everybody else is external. We'll get into that in a minute. And I'm on page 46, and your textbook talks about, again, one of my more infamous companies, that would be Wells Fargo. Those who don't know, Wells Fargo had a sterling reputation, past tense. Since 2016, it seems like every year they keep coming into the same problem as far as becoming a despicable company. The first and major problem, they keep repeating things like this, is they were signing up customers for checking accounts without their permission. Everyone who did this got $5 or something. They got some money for it. Not only were they doing it, they were telling the associates and clerks that they had to put these people into these things without their permission, because their managers above them had it in place about hitting certain marks and getting a bonus. So, to keep your job, do you do this? The name of the company is Wells Fargo, the bank. If you bank at Wells Fargo, you might want to check your statements. Do you do this to keep your job, or do you quit? There's your ethical dilemma. You have bills to pay. I'm sure many people did this against their will. Quite a few people probably were forced into this stupidity. I'm going to get around to the structure of the organization as your role is how you handle ethical dilemmas, either individually or the organization as a whole, and we'll look at the shareholders. This is a lovely little graph to show you how all of this interacts. Again, internally and externally, what's going on. Everyone you touch. The larger the company, the more people you touch, and you, in theory, have a larger social responsibility. Distinguishing between the responsibility to stockholders and shareholders. Actually splitting those two up is a new thing. They considered shareholders, people just with the money. They've expanded it to stockholders, actually having a direct monetary interest in the company, to shareholders because they have all of it. Your textbook makes them slightly different. Stakeholders, probably a better term between them. But yeah, I prefer that actually now that I'm thinking about it. Looking at the 5 groups, internally, your employees starting at about 11 o'clock, your investors, those are stockholders. Now I'm getting confused, there's too many words. And we're going to use that in a general sense. Employees are shareholders, your investors are stockholders. Suppliers are shareholders. Your customers, you could split between those. The community is definitely a stakeholder. Now, what does the community have involved in that? Well, directly, if nothing else, you're providing employees for the community, which makes them stakeholders. Looking at these 5 groups, we'll get into a little detail on those. The consumers, the employees, investors, suppliers, and the local community who interacts with them. Are you polluting? Are you providing jobs? This gets back to what we talked about the other day on Tuesday. Are you a sponsor for the local Little League team? That kind of stuff. Slide 19. We are on page 47. We are on slide 19. Customers, are they treated in a fair and equitable way? Get into the main thing we've all had an experience with by now. How do you handle returns? Is there a question, or do you just return it and keep moving on? You'll notice about the short YouTube videos I'll be showing. A lot of them are business related. You know, I got my other things, but one of them talked about how Best Buy has been able to survive when the rest of them have died off on the vine. Circuit City and the rest of them. How has Best Buy been able to survive? One of the things that they're good at is customer service. The price matching, some people are concerned with that. I'm not as concerned. Are you willing to pay the freight? I'm willing to pay the freight and a little bit more money because I want to store handy in case I need something immediately. And therein lies the issue. If my headphones go out, I don't want to wait even a day. I want the headphones now. And I need that now, which is why I still want a physical store. I got a printer. I need toner cartridges. I need it now, not 2 days from now, not a week from now. There's another thing in the supply chain that's dried up, to be funny. Toner cartridge. It's an HP printer. They don't have toner cartridges. Not for my printer. I had to go off brand. It took about a week. Customer service. I get it right now. That's how Best Buy has stayed alive. Employees, again, stakeholders. How are they treated? $50 million in the bank, and you're going to go to work. All you need is the manager to say one thing and you're out the door. If you don't have a choice because you need the paycheck, you're going to put up with it. Given the option, now what do you do? The investors and shareholders. Even in a company like Enron, supposedly that was for the shareholders. They got nothing. The company files for bankruptcy, you don't get anything. if you don't know how bankruptcy works, if there's any money left over, they pay creditors first. Anybody you owe a bill to, debts. After debts, then you pay the employees if there's anything left of that. Anything after that, it goes to the people who had shares of stock. Most of the time, when I mean most, I mean 99% of the time that I've ever read, I do not remember a company filed for bankruptcy and the shareholders getting a penny. But the people who have their money in there, and it's worse for the employees who have most of their life savings invested in the company, got nothing. The employees for General Motors and Chrysler, when those companies filed for bankruptcy, their share prices were worth nothing. And most of the time, when the automobiles and the big three gave out bonuses, they included shares. Good luck with that. What do you do to the performance? Again, everything is mired towards we're going to make the most value for the shareholders. To quote economist and Nobel Prize winner Milton Friedman, the only responsibility for the company is to increase value for the shareholders. That was his view. It would be in direct conflict with what we're reading right now. Responsibilities towards your customers, in theory, they have certain rights. There's supposedly a general contract with the customers that you have, the Consumer Rights Protection Agency and the like. Just the legitimate things. If you buy something, it should work. Even if the sign reads as is, there's an assumption that it works. The idea that I can sell as is. If you're going bankrupt and it doesn't work and I can't get the money back, maybe. And even I don't like that. But the idea that as is means it doesn't work and you're taking your own risk is wrong. I buy something, I'm under the assumption that it should work at the very least. Last but not least is with the consumer against price gouging. Your textbook discusses one of the more common issues when you have the unfair pricing. There's an emergency, there's a disaster, and all of a sudden that case of water that was $5 is $25. That happens a lot. There's a flood, there's a snowstorm, a storm knocks out all the power. The case of water was $5. You go back the next day, it's $25. There are economists who believe that you should allow that to happen. Their argument is that will encourage other people to produce water, which would increase the supply, which will automatically drive down the price afterwards if you allow price gouging. Okay. Now, from a 40,000 foot view, and this is a micro theory, not a macro theory, it almost makes sense. If I'm encouraged by the fact that I can make $25 for a case of water, I might shift my resources to making bottled water. When I get there, if I was making a profit at $5, and even if I sell it for 15, I have a lot of profit. And there's the theory. The issue is, what if no one else has the resources? And you can put the current situation we're in now as an example. My favorite example of this, why it doesn't work, is the toilet paper idea. Why were people hoarding toilet paper? It was a panic and it had no real substance. Okay, under the theory that you could price gouge, the manufacturers would make more toilet paper. Well, they didn't. And people wondered why. And then you have business stories trying to explain more about toilet paper than you were concerned with. They had no more capacity. The short version of this. Doesn't matter the demand, they didn't have the capacity, and no one was going to go build a toilet paper factory just for this purpose. And then it clears up and you've spent money in an area you don't want to. If the production capacity has already hit its limit, there's nothing you can do. Your responsibility to your employees. Again, with the video, that work-life balance got thrown out the window. Working 18 hours a day, 6 days a week. There are horror stories about people during the first week of orientation or boot camp at Goldman Sachs. They're told to meet the manager at 8 in the morning. The manager wouldn't show up until 7 p.m. Whoever stayed got the job. Thank you. There's an interesting story. Is that responsible to your employees? Your personal boot camp? What skill sets are you trying to give the employees so they can be more productive? Additional training? Do you have resources for them if you have to lay them off? Again, additional skill sets, hopefully giving you the opportunity to find another career. The other argument about getting a college degree, you now have a different skill set, which allows you to do other things. And not everyone wants to go to college, even if it is free. Because 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. My head count was 15. This class holds up as well as most classes do. 4 students will either withdraw or fail. 3 will withdraw. I guarantee it. Company has a responsibility not to hire or fire or not hire based upon age, sex, race. Age isn't in there. I'm saying that because I'm old. You should hire based on ability. No one does. I'm not saying that to be mean. I'm saying that because, like it or not, we make judgments. Consciously or subconsciously, we make judgments. I'm old enough to remember when there were malls. I used to work in malls. One of the managers told me, hey, your job is behind the counter. Okay, that's fine. Your job is to clean up the store. Okay, that's fine. You stock the store. Okay, that's fine. And point blank told me, the young ladies I hired them based on looks. They're in charge of sales. You're in charge of the counter, just to let you know. You stay behind that counter. You're hiring based on looks. At least you let me know these things. Okay. Like it or not, we do it all the time without even thinking about it. What was the comment I got when we started? You're a Michigan State fan. I wore this hat in the wrong situation. I get fired. Person on the other side of the table, behind them is a U of M diploma. I'm not hiring little brother. Oh, no. Who's the next applicant? You went to Eastern? That'll work. Come on in. No. Like it or not, it happens.
I was gonna say I'm not a state fan, but my daughter's going there.
You are now.
I am now.
Oh, responsibilities to the other stakeholders. These are more external and not directly that you would see, but the suppliers. The suppliers are counting on you for their livelihood as well. As a Java joint manager, the people where we're getting the coffee from, the cups, the straws, people doing maintenance and other things, they're counting on us to be an ethical company, to be around. We signed a contract for 5 years to pick up the trash. They're counting on that as a revenue stream. They have a responsibility as well. Not that everybody thinks about it, but that is what happens. Because if you're the one running the company doing the cleaning or picking up the trash, you want the person to honor the contract. You honor your side, they honor theirs. And how well do you interact with the community? In this case, the question is what goes on as far as, we talked about this on Tuesday. Are you the one doing the Little League? Are you supporting the Little League teams? Are you doing all of the Happy Joy stuff? The soccer teams, the Girl Scouts are coming around. Are you letting them sell cookies in front of the store, et cetera, et cetera? How do you interact with the local community? It's an important piece. All right, who's our volunteer? Who wants to volunteer today?
I can.
Senior Luke, you are in charge. Slide 23.
Slide 23. All right.
All right. Before we go, there we go. This is a good pace. That's a pretty deep. Why do you keep doing that? Okay, let's get to this. The login should be in the book. The login to the Pearson is in the class. So let me know how that works. I was trying to do it as a student. I couldn't get it to work. Okay, this is our class. This is the way it looks from my end. This is the instructor end, not your end. Okay. I believe I only put 3 in because I started looking at that thinking I don't want to be that mean. Quiz is kind of self-explanatory. Just wanted to show you what these look like. This is a simulation. There's one for Teams, but I don't want to go that because I'm not that comfortable with Zoom to get it to do what I want it to do. This is what you'll be looking at. They'll give you a simulation and it would go something like this.
Scenario. You're the owner of a small startup company called Moondogs Coffee, which
this is what you'll do. You'll listen to this, go through the scenario, and this is when you get to act as the business owner or the manager. So you get some idea of what this goes through. You pick one, lights up, and it goes on. This particular one is asking questions about the price point of Moondog. Although I think the obvious answer is, everything is related to Java Cafe. but that's me. Next one, probably not this particular chapter, but we'll look at it anyway. An e-text video. Same principle.
The external environments of business. All businesses operate within a large
On and off only.
environment. The external environment is everything outside the business itself that might affect it. The major elements of the external environment are the domestic business environment, the global business environment, the technological environment, the political legal environment, the socio-cultural environment, and the economic environment. The domestic business environment includes other businesses within the country in which a business operates. For example, the automobile manufacturer, Ford, must consistently monitor product offerings of its domestic competitors, including General Motors and Chrysler.
And obviously you'd pick 5 questions, 2 attempts. I'm not going to, not quite as long as I thought, but I'm not going to do that. 2 you were already here. And the last one, 1, 2, 3, the Sims, the E, and the other video format. Same idea, play the video, go ahead and answer the questions. You'll get 2 attempts on those as well. The quizzes, you will get 3 attempts. Two basic forms of planning economics are, Mr. Parent, what do you got for me? B, C, capitalism and privatization. I got other people still putting in questions. The correct answer for that is E. You remember the first class, I talked about an open system and a closed system. A closed system is where the government informs you what the problem is. No, I'm reading the question, sir. The 2 basic forms of planning economies. An open system, which is capitalism, and a closed system, which is communism. Although I thought I had this to the point where it would not show the answers. I'm going to have to go back and change that one. No, I'm reading the question. I did not state which is the best system. And then you're going to get a socialist who says capitalism is not the best system. There are parts in the world where that argument could be made. Okay. Any questions? This is what your homework looks like. Read chapters. I recommend you do the quiz last. Everything else, if you're doing correctly, the quiz should be a cakewalk. Okay? Any questions, Padawan?
No, sir.
Nope.
Okay, you newbies, any questions?
No questions.
We have one. Go ahead, sir. What is your question? School indicates when I checked the 11th edition, I'm using the 12th. While they're edition behind, I don't know. As far as I know, it's about the same thing. And I've had this book for 3 years. I don't know why they keep touting the 11th edition. Your business majors, econ majors, use the least expensive means to your end. Allocating your resources appropriately. As long as you get the access code, I could care less which edition you use to answer your question. I don't believe there's enough of a change.